Liquorland are proud partners of the AskPiesNation podcast for another season of footy. Enjoy winter your way with Liquorland. And Marcus, even though winter's now upon us, there's still no better time to head down to Liquorland and grab your favourite drink.
Cold drinks, hot pies, Nico. We like them week to week.
It's a perfect combination, that is for sure. Liquorland, from the land you love. Please drink responsibly. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the AskPiesNation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. My name is Nicholas Sacco, your host for this week's episode 15 of Season 5, or episode 128, if you're counting from the beginning. And as the title suggests, it certainly wasn't our day in yesterday's King's birthday clash. We left our run late, but we fell to the Dees by just 4 points, taking us to 11-2 at the bye. We'll chat all things Melbourne, get through another round of AskPiesNation, another VFL wrap-up, plus speak to our next guest, the crowd competition winner, in a pretty low-key episode. I know that always seems to be the case when we lose, but that's pretty much what it is. And to help me get through it is Jack Dugan. Jack, welcome.
Nico, good to be here. A bit flat on this Tuesday afternoon, but that's okay. I mean, probably a loss that's come at a good time just before the bye. Bye has come at a good time as well. So, yeah, hopefully the boys can rest up and look ready to bounce back against Adelaide.
And not get the flu would be a good start.
That would be great. Or COVID.
Seems to be ravaging our place at the moment. But anyway, we stuck firm and nearly got on top of the D's in the end. But look, to be honest, and I think a realistic Collingwood supporter would say that we didn't really deserve to win in the end. Kicked the first 3 goals of the match, but afterwards, Melbourne just on top throughout the rest of the afternoon. And we had our little spurts, but more often than not, they were able to not only absorb our pressure, but really, I think, beat us at our own game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they made us look predictable, I thought, with the way they set up their defensive structure. I felt like we were suffocated in that third and fourth quarter, getting the ball out of our defensive 50. We just couldn't do it with Lever and May setting us up so well. And, you know, we looked predictable, looked to be going down the line probably a bit too often, but probably just more due to the fact that they were able to close up all other options. And then, of course, when we did get the ball moving the way we wanted to in that breaking the lines and quick half rebound footy, we just couldn't execute with a skill. I mean, I haven't seen us have that poor of a game by hand or by foot, I don't think, under Fly McRae. And yeah, it was when Scott Pendlebury's kicking it off the instep, I think it's not going to be your day.
No, it wasn't. It was just those little things, the bounce of the ball more often than not didn't go our way. Reef McInnes having a fresh area in the goal square probably didn't help. Missed targets. Yeah, inside 50 entries were just really terrible. And I think more so, after Lipper's goal in the first few minutes of the last quarter, you felt like it was another opportunity for us to go on a bit of a run. We were just so stagnant, clueless, like deers in headlights in that back 50. We sort of just gifted them the ball every single time. Here, have another chance to get in front, have another chance, and it just didn't go our way.
Yeah, it doesn't help also. I thought Melbourne's midfield really got on top of us as well. I mean, we matched them, I thought, in the first quarter, but for the rest of the game, I mean, they were just able to get it out to their outside runners time and time again. Tommy Mitchell battled well, I thought, in there, but at the same time, I think Jack Viney gets the Neil Danaher trophy, and I think that's almost your game right there. He was huge for the D's, along with Christian Petrarca, Max Gore and Brodie Grundy. They all had really solid games, and the ball we almost just looked like we had no one out there to help because the ball was just coming out so quick. So fair play to the D's. I got a feeling we might see them a little bit later on in the year, though, so hopefully a bit of retribution.
I'm actually shattered we don't get to play them again.
Yeah, me too.
This year. We usually do play them twice.
Well, it's strange that we don't, because last year, obviously, Queen's Birthday gets 75,000 plus each year, but we got a good 70,000 to that Friday night game as well, and that was huge, and it was close, and, the last 3 games we've played them, they've been, big, close games, so a bit of a miss from the AFL.
Logic doesn't work at the AFL, mate. It's just the way it is. But yeah, I think Jack Viney was superb, really, and he won the last clearance of the game. That sort of summed up how the afternoon went for us. So unfortunately, not our turn this time. Let's get to the pie that caught your eye. Intrigued to get your thoughts on this one, and whether you highlighted a player or it was someone you felt that maybe disappointed you a little bit.
I've gone with the former. I'm going to highlight a player.
Okay.
I've gone with Paddy Lipinski.
Yeah.
On a day, look, there was probably not a lot of shining lights for us overall, but really happy with Paddy Lipinski's return to the side. Really stressed about how he would go in this team, considering there's a lot of blokes probably ahead of him in the midfield space. Coming in off injury as well was not concerned, but I was interested to see how his role would look within the side. And it's nice to know that he can now go forward and have a real big impact. I'm a huge advocate for midfielders going forward. I think, Nico, if you can find the ball in the guts, you're going to find the ball in the forward line. And although he only had the 15 touches, kicked the 2 goals, looked really classy and silky around goal. Really good to see him back. Almost hasn't really missed a step, and I'm looking forward to more of Paddy Lipinski's work for the rest of the year.
Yeah, just highlighted the fact that he's a best 22 player, just coming straight back into this side and delivering like that. Built for the big stage, and it was awesome to see him get that first goal that Luke called earlier in the chat as well. So shout out to him too. The pod that caught my eye, I went with Jack Crisp. I thought he was able to play his natural game on the weekend, and particularly when there were other midfielders that couldn't stand up, bar Tommy Mitchell, of course. But your likes of your Scott Pendlebury's. I mean, Nick Dacos still had a fantastic afternoon, but just that efficiency wasn't up to scale. I thought that Jack Crisp was able to deliver and play that role where we needed a bit of an out, and he was able to deliver. I mean, was able to go in and under as well, finished with an equal game high of 11 tackles to go with his 28 disposals, but his ability to try create scores for us and give us multiple opportunities was a real highlight. Finished with 7 inside 50s, which was a Collingwood high, and an equal game high of 7 score involvements. And we haven't seen that too much from Crispy this year, sort of flown under the radar a little bit, let the other midfielders get more of the minutes and more of the opportunities. But with no Degoe in that team, Sidebottom at times to provide that run, and with a few other midfielders having an off day, it was awesome to see Crispy stand up and take charge and do what he could to try and will us over the line, particularly in times where the momentum wasn't going our way. So I think that was one of Crispy's better games of the year.
Yeah, absolutely it was. I mean, you just spoke on it there, mate, about, losing Degoe and Sidebottom. You're really looking to blokes like Crisp who have quiet years to date. I mean, he touted him that he was going to be the next or another Copeland Trophy winner this year. So for him to get that opportunity to probably step up in the absence of a Steele and a Degoe, really, really good to see.
Absolutely. And I mean, let's look at the game in general, because obviously there were moments that didn't go our way. We talk about those little bounces of the ball or things that just didn't happen for us. But what was it? Was it at the source that we didn't get that win in the end? Because it felt to me, you mentioned with the Melbourne midfield, they were able to win the pivotal clearances. They had us in the air all day. Gawn and Grundy were taking marks all over the ground, and bar a Cox mark here or there, we really did struggle to win the aerial presence. The kicks inside 50 were poor. There were, in hindsight, so many facets to that game that suggested we should have lost this by 5 or 6 goals. But to our credit, we were able to hang in there, and also helping out with the Demons missing a lot of set shots on goal. So what do you feel like was the biggest issue into the result that came about yesterday?
Yeah, I feel, again, it was a culmination of both losing the midfield battle in the way that we did and just the way that Melbourne set up around the ground. I was calling for us to change something because it wasn't working, going into the three-quarter time siren. You need to look to perhaps go the short kick instead of the long down the line. But we didn't. And then when we did do that and try to go quick, as I said, just the skill wasn't there. Missed handballs. Haven't seen that again in this Collingwood side for the better part of 2 years. So yeah, we had an off day, Nico. I think it's got to be said. We had an off day in many facets around the ground, but Melbourne are a really sound defensive team. It's what's been highlighted, since the final siren of Monday's game, and that came to the fore on King's birthday, and we really struggled to deal with it. Hopefully, we can look at that, and next time we'll be able to mitigate it.
One big factor to our game, Jack, is pressure. Pressure. That's all Fly's been able to drill into us since the start of his tenure last year. There have been so many occasions where the pressure has come from opposition sides, and we've been able to absorb it so well, and on the flip, in our transition work, go ahead and kick pretty simple goals that puts that momentum back into our favour. That didn't happen on Monday. It was Melbourne's pressure that really stumbled us, put us on the back foot, made us second guess our decisions when there were times where we would just go for it and we know it would work one way or another. Melbourne's ability to, confide us to pockets in the defensive 50 was just so critical to their win, I think, on Monday. And in turn, our pressure was lacking. And a lot of that came in our forward half, where in previous weeks we've been able to put in some fantastic pressure to keep that ball inside forward 50 and create a lot of goals from that source. It didn't happen. You look at the tackles inside 50 stat, they had 17. We had 4.
Yeah.
Now that is not like Collingwood at all. It's our lowest total in 2023, and I think this comes back to that West Coast game. Now, on paper, you look at it, it's a 10-goal victory, but now that you see that result against Melbourne, there's so much little things in that Eagles clash that continue to translate into that Melbourne game. Before the West Coast clash, we never had a inside 50 tackle count less than 5. We had 5 against the Eagles. We had 4 yesterday against Melbourne. And not only that, we now average 9.6, which we rank 14th in the comp for. So it's crazy what a fortnight of football can do with that statistic in particular. We only allowed almost 8 inside 50 tackles to an opposition, yet we let 17, which is the most we've let for quite a while, and we let 12 against West Coast a week prior. So that's 29 in 2 weeks. So it's those little things that we just weren't able to get right yesterday that had a big say into the result, and I found very fascinating that the pressure game was so off, not only from us, but we just allowed Melbourne to do what they wanted.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say Melbourne's pressure games. You know, it's not down to 1 or 2 players, be it a Pickett or a Viney. It's a team thing, and I've spoken about this before, and I'll say it again. This pressure game is a team buy-in thing, and when 1 or 2 or 3 players in the forward line are slightly off, and those numbers aren't quite off, you get a result like you do yesterday, and teams can have their way with you. So no doubt that'll be a point to address from Fly and the coaching staff that they'll look to rectify after the bye, hopefully.
And I found it interesting that Fly made a point about not taking the game on in those early minutes of the last term, because it's something we would usually do, and maybe we had to be behind by a considerable margin in that last quarter for us to kick into gear a little bit. But again, we were just so stagnant. We lacked energy, made uncharacteristic errors around the ground, and it was like a broken record. But it was the difference in the game, because we saw in the last 5 minutes of the term, we were able to turn things around and pull off an almost unlikely victory, and we'd be having a different conversation here today. But it just fascinates me as to why that didn't happen. Was it a fitness thing? Was it something else? Could they sense that Melbourne were getting on top no matter what? Was it the system that the Demons had in place around the ground that didn't allow us to really try and move the ball through the corridor? We were always forced to go through the wings, or Dacos and Moore. They would rarely take more than 3 seconds with ball in hand before going, but they would take their full 10 before having been called to play on, and then causing a turnover or kicking it long down the line where Melbourne would just mark it anyway.
Yeah. We've had an off game. We've had a flat game.
Don't worry, I know.
And hopefully this isn't a sign of things to come. It was really good to see that we were able to give everyone in the stadium a scare late in that last quarter. But I think realistically, as you said before, Nico, we're probably lucky not to lose this by 4 or 5 goals due to Melbourne's inaccurate kicking. And I really think they did dominate the game after half time at least, if not after quarter time. So yeah, I mean, bye's becoming a really good time. Hopefully the boys can have a rest up. We get a few players back, McStay. Obviously a fair few talking points around Johnson's game. It was very, very quiet. So there'll be conversation around that swap. Who else is due in after the bye? There's 1 or 2 others.
Well, Howe's probably on his way back, which would be great to see. Sidebottom not far after that.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, so a few names in after the bye, and hopefully can bounce back, because we had a poor showing yesterday.
Makes a call about not having any changes to that 22 look really good right now, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Couple of other mentions. So you mentioned the forward line. So Harvey Harrison, we didn't even touch on him last week. We probably should have. It was his debut. Was able to get on the scoreboard last week and again on Monday. So nice to see some VFL talent rewarded with some work in the senior side. I don't think he's a best 22 caliber player yet, but that experience will go a long way, I think, to him developing his game throughout the rest of the year. But what have you made of his first couple of games?
I think seamless, really. I mean, strange couple of games to have a sample size of. Even we play West Coast, I think everyone sort of just writes that game off no matter when you play them. But no, good to see he was able to get on the scoreboard, and then good to see he was able to get on the scoreboard in front of 80,000 people on King's birthday. That's shows a lot, I think. So hopefully a sign of things to come for Harvey. Strange game though, because it wasn't really up he didn't really get much of a chance up there in the forward line, unfortunately, on King's birthday. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what he can do for the rest of the year.
I think he was just caught out of our system at times, didn't really know where to be when we didn't have the football, but that all comes with the learning process. So I think 2 games under his belt, 1 away against the Eagles, a lower side, and 1 against a really quality outfit in Melbourne will go a long way, as we mentioned. Brodie Grundy, can't not discuss him. Of course, there was always so much talk about him coming back into the team. And look, yeah, not great for the fans that went on and booed him, but that pretty much stopped, I reckon, about the second term after he kicked his goal, which I felt was always going to come, to be honest. But, well, yeah, once that goal came, I think those boos pretty much quickly went away. And I don't know about you, but no one was really booing around my area of the ground. It was that real select few, maybe towards a cheer squad, that just wanted to give him a little bit, just to remind him and say, hey, you don't play for us anymore. Yes, we respect you, but still suffer for today. Went on and kicked the goal. I thought he was pretty solid around the ground too. Him and Gawn were just too strong for Cox and Cameron.
Yeah, the combination of Grundy and Gawn at the moment is a really potent one. I made the call last week about what have Brody Grundy and Max Gawn done that Darcy Cameron and Mason Cox haven't. And I said that I'll probably be eating my words, and I absolutely they were exceptional. They're a dynamic duo, and I think the best part about them is Simon Goodwin coaches that system so well. They always seem to be perfectly combined in that if Gawn's coming out of the square, Brody Grundy's doing the centre work. If whoever's off, they're covering the ground. They just, they've got it worked out to a T. A matchup that I think we're going to have to put a bit more time into next time if we play them later on in the year.
Yeah, I mean, Cox was okay. He was able to get on the scoreboard as well and do some things around the ground. Cameron really struggled, didn't he? He was just didn't look physical enough to try and compete with his opponents, and just had as a few players did throughout that night, a really off game.
Yeah. I think we got a real sort of look in at, I say vintage Brody Grundy, like he's coming into the twilight of his career, but it was 2019 Grundy. I saw him a few times on his knees, getting the handball out to the running midfielders, winning those clearances for them. And on a day where we were struggling in there, that was proved to be another pivotal point. And marking around the ground as well. I felt like he was marking them full back, full forward in the middle of the ground on the wings. So they were really good.
I mean, it didn't help with our kicking in general, decision making, but you're right. When it did go to those contests down the line, they were able to mark everything. And to be honest, even when they didn't mark it, it made us look worse because they had so many numbers around the contest. Our small forwards or crummers were nowhere to be seen. Obviously, you don't have Ali in that side. You don't have DeGoey who can play that role. No Jack Ginnivan, which I think is a selection query that many will be wondering about because he was in that 22 up until about 2 hours before the game. Fly decided not to put him in. Tactical, manage, whatever you want to call it. Didn't play. Decided to give Reef McInnes a crack, who unfortunately struggled at times throughout yesterday's game. So, in hindsight, do you think it was the right call to keep Ginnivan out of that team? I mean, I don't think it would have been enough to win the game in the moments that mattered, but you look at it, it's a 4-point loss.
Yeah.
Is it a different story?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a different story, but there's a what if about a question around it, no doubt. I mean, I think when these late outs happen, you just got to sort of write them off to players just not pulling up 100% on the day. I think it was reported as illness or something like that. Bit of that going around, not only in the club, just around coming into winter. So, probably just pulled out not 100%. I'd rather Jack pull out. This is going to sound strange, but I'd rather Jack pull out and we say, oh, what if he played? Then he plays under a cloud of should he have played or not? And we all sit there going, well, we definitely shouldn't have played. Why didn't we pull him out and put Reef in? So, Reef did have a bit of a tough day, but again, it's hard to judge a player like Reef's game on a day where I thought we were probably more poor in other areas.
Can we also talk about Isaac Quainer's game? Because his last 5 or 6 weeks have been exceptional. He now ranks elite for intercept possessions and intercept marks. He had 16 touches on the weekend. He had 8 marks in total, which was an equal Collingwood high. He was terrific once again and kept Pickett pretty quiet for I guess, the majority of the game, and had to force the other forwards in the Demons' inside 50 area to kick goals and keep them in the hunt at times. But I felt like Quainer continues to be outstanding, whether it's his run and carry, his ability to win a one-on-one contest, which we had questioned in previous years. He is becoming the ultimate defender for us.
He absolutely is. He's had a really huge month, I feel, and growing week by week. Really good to see from Isaac. We're calling on him more, not even just for his play against Pickett, but I felt like there was a few times where we got trapped out with him on Van Rooyen and him on Gawn and Grundy at times, and he was, despite being half their size, was still able to hold his own. And he's just exceptional. Seems like, again, over this course of the month, he's really grown in confidence. Felt he was lacking confidence at the start of the year, but now he's got that back into his game. He's running on top of the ground.
So can I ask, with all that said, do you subscribe to the idea that this is the loss we had to have?
Yeah, I don't think you ever want to have a loss. But if it's going to happen at an opportune time, you look at the things, maybe some tired legs just before the bye. It would have been nice to steal it at the end there and go and things like playing, 1/4 of 1/4 and 5 minutes of good footy and still getting the W. But not to be. Melbourne were the better side on the day. And the thing about losses like this is it's very clear to see where we went wrong. Again, we've spoken about, don't want to sound like a broken record, going long down the line too often, and the skills just, weren't up to scratch. So things that you feel are quite easy to rectify as well. I love hearing Craig McRae talk always, but especially after a loss, and you just feel so reassured. And what he said about, I'd rather lose by 10 goals and then die wondering. It resonates with you, and I feel like we're in extremely good hands, and we will learn from this. But I do think not so much the loss, but certainly the bye has come at a really, really good time for us.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we take for granted a bit that we have McRae at the helm, and he always just seems to calm everyone down because, there's always a few Collingwood supporters that fly off the handle after a loss like that. First loss in 9 weeks, and already this player needs to go, and he should be playing at the club again. But, you have someone like him, and he's just, it's all right, calm down. We will learn from this. So, and you trust that we will.
Yep.
And we've seen it in previous years. It was actually the first time under McRae that we had lost a game after leading at half time, which I found interesting. But it's all right. These firsts have got to happen now, and I'd rather them happen in June and September.
Yes.
So we'll keep on moving. Was there anything else from the game that stood out for you?
Not necessarily from the game, just sort of wanted to more speak around the Freeze MND stuff. You were there yesterday, Nico. I think the moment where the 2 Guard of Honours were formed by both clubs and Neil was able to walk off to a standing ovation from 80,000 people. It was, I've heard Jared Ratley today describe it as, a similar feeling to Teddy Whitten's last lap at the State of Origin game. I obviously wasn't alive for that, but to, have someone who was at that speak to this in the same sentence, you sort of understand how big of a moment that was, and just hats off to Neil Danaher and his family for doing their best to fight the beast and do it so publicly as well. They've been exceptional, and really wish them all the best.
The legacy he's built around this game and this disease and the awareness of it is remarkable, really. And for the whole country to have raised over $2 million once again to reach that target within a couple of days is extraordinary, and it just goes to show the respect that we have, not just for Neil as a person, but for what he's going through as well. So, of course, we wish all the best for what he is dealing with at this stage, and to anyone else that's also fighting MND. So great that we can have a game like that to recognise it and to use it as an opportunity to get those donations coming in, and you still can. Just because the game's finished doesn't mean you can't. We've got a lot of community leagues around with the Soccer to M&D round coming up as well, so you'll see a lot of footy and netball clubs across wearing M&D socks, which is brilliant too, so we'll keep that support going as often as we can. Before we wrap up, let's get to the votes from yesterday's game. Of course, the fans are still getting their votes piling in. Not as clear-cut with the votes this time as we have in previous weeks. So we'll see where that tally ends up by the end of the day. So if you're listening and it's still open, be sure to head and get your votes in for the Fan Award. But Jack, who are your 3 2 1s?
So honourable mentions to Nick Dacos, Paddy Lipinski and Tay Adams. I thought they all battled really well, but just miss out. Braden Maynard gets my 1 vote. I thought it might have been a typo when I looked up at the scoreboard as they showed the stats halfway through the second quarter. It said Braden Maynard 16 disposals. I think it's the most touches he's had in any game this year, let alone at half time. So got his hands on the footy, 580 odd metres gains, I believe. So really good game from Bruz, one that's probably been a long time coming. 2 and 3 was a toss-up for mine. I've given 2 to Jack Crisp. Really good to see him step up in the absence of Jordan De Goey. Got on the end of a really nice goal. And I've given 3 to Tommy Mitchell. Now, again, we've spoken about it. We got beaten in the midfield, but I really felt Tommy Mitchell tried his best and battled away all day. And, he gets my 3 votes. Your votes, Nico.
I snuck Lipper in for 1. I think this is just more. It was great to see him come back. 2 goals, 15 touches. Can't ask more for a return from a side that had been going so well. And in fact, was able to kick 2 pretty crucial majors to keep us in the game. 2 votes to Tom Mitchell, just sneaks into 30 touches, which was a Collingwood high. I went at 80%, which was a rarity yesterday, seeing as how inefficient we were at times throughout the ball, particularly in that midfield. 10 tackles, along with 5 clearances. So he did everything possible. He can definitely hold his head up high, as can Jack Crispy, who I gave the 3 votes to, as I mentioned in the pie that caught my eye. One of, if not the best game he's played in 2023, and hopefully he can continue that form throughout the rest of the year, particularly with some names still yet to come back into that midfield. But we've got big Ask Pies Nation coming up, as well as our Guess the Crowd competition winner and a nice VFL wrap-up following a nice win on the weekend. So we'll be right back. This halftime break is brought to you by Liquorland. Enjoy winter your way with Liquorland, like Carlton draft bottles available in singles, 6-packs or slabs of 24. They go down to treat the Carlton drafts, Jack.
Absolutely, they do, Nico. Favourite of mine, the Carlton Draft Stubbies, and I usually go to them after a big win from the Pies, so you can best believe I've been going to the fridge a fair bit this season. So get on down to Liquorland and get yourself some Carlton Draft.
Pop into your local Liquorland today or shop online and click and collect in just 30 minutes. Liquorland, from the land you love. Please drink responsibly. Welcome back to the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. Let's move right into Ask Pies Nation, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TikTok, everywhere. We are everywhere. We continue to be every single place possible for Ask Pies Nation, so make sure you get involved. And the question put up by Lukey today, pretty simple one. What was the major concern of yours from our performance and loss yesterday, and something that needs to be addressed heading into the bye? And look, I know we don't like losing, Jack, but it's nice to put that question out there every now and then just to get the feelers from the fans. And the comments came from everywhere. So lots to get through from Ask Pies Nation. We'll get straight into it, and we'll start on Twitter. We've got MWT Go Pies 77 smashed in the contest for nearly 2.5 quarters. The Dees had more numbers around the ball and better connection with their forwards, lost on the ground and in the air. And that's what we were saying. So not only aerially with Gawn and Grundy were they superb, but when the ball hit ground level, they had 5, 6 more numbers than us, and the small forwards or crummers just weren't there.
Yeah, they were absolutely everywhere, Nico.
David Capici, boys have covered for no ruckman or jet tools all year. Our game plan relies on extreme pressure in tight and hard running both ways. We have a few out and have battled illness for a few weeks. It was the perfect storm. We will be fine and humming when we need to be in September. And there's a few that are the same as David that have a lot of optimism about where we're going to be, but we'll see how we go. Xander Curis on Twitter, we keep fading out in second and third quarters. We can keep on relying on our first and last quarters, but that won't get the job done. It will be the death of us come September if we don't fix it. We need that 4-quarter killer mentality. I think no matter how good we've been in years gone by, we just never seem to have consistent 4-quarter performances.
Well, I think it is the nature of the way we're playing the footy at the moment. You're never going to dominate a game for 4 quarters in a row. You're always, we're so attacking. We play high-risk footy at times. So you're almost, by virtue of that fact, you're going to let sides in the game at some period. I struggle to see a time where we will dominate a game for 4 quarters, but hopefully the work that we do before and after those lull periods gets us home.
Even Purdue during finals, if we come off a couple of tough games and our opposition have had a week off, what is our decision-making going to look like against an opponent who is well prepared in a close game? We had very poor entries yesterday against a good defence. And that is very true. He makes some good points too against, I guess, sides that are coming off good form or a slightly extended break than us, whereas we have a couple of tough games. It's different because we came into this clash off some pretty easy victories in the end, again, but they weren't 4-quarter performances, so that's one to keep an eye out for. Grant Lay on Twitter, Pendles looked every bit his age, seemed reluctant to bend down and pick up the ball, and his delivery was not up to his lofty standards. Let's hope it's a one-off. It did seem pretty obvious yesterday that he was just handballing it or kicking it to plays he thought were there, but they weren't, or his decision-making was just subpar. It's something we hadn't seen from Pendles for a long time, and like Grant, hopefully it's a one-off.
Well, I don't think we've ever seen it, Nico. I think in the twilight of his career, I think we can grant him one bad game, old Pendles. So,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, no, he had a bit of a mare yesterday with his ball use, but he's a champion. He'll be right.
Michael Rakavalis, Darcy Cameron was found out yesterday, struggled in the ruck and consistently outbodied and pushed aside. Cox shows him how to be a ruckman. Now, you tell me that fact 12 weeks ago, I'm laughing at you, but it was spot on yesterday. It was so obvious that Cameron wasn't up to task for Gawn and Grundy. And look, it's another one of those where it could just be a one-off, but yeah, a bit of a concern. I know he was just coming back from an injury. He's just been settling into the side again, but hopefully this break's going to do him a world of good and he can get back to that form. We saw him play early in the season before he got injured.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose getting physical isn't an easy thing to rectify, and coming up against the two of the premier ruckmen in the comp always going to be difficult. But yeah, hopefully Darcy can look to improve on that.
Joel Greer on Twitter, kicking inside 50 was the most obvious issue yesterday. If we play our fast brand of footy, though, that should fix up the problem. I'm not too concerned with yesterday. Losses happen. We want to hit our peak in September, just like we did last year. So let's hope we can keep that going. Matty D on Twitter, nothing. The loss is good for our club. We were due in flight. I trust 11-2. Couldn't be happier. And in hindsight, you've got to look at that and say 11-2 after 13 weeks. You've got to be pretty happy to take that.
Yeah, if you had told me we were going to be 11-2 at the bye, I would have said, you need to go check yourself into a loony bin, because there was no way that was going to happen. But yeah, hindsight, you've got to absolutely respect what the boys have been able to do for the start of the year, and got a few huge clashes after the bye. We're going to put the cat amongst the pigeons, rolling into September for sure.
Oh, gee, I haven't heard that one in a long time. Andrew Pepiat on Twitter, forward line entries, it's been the case for years. While we have been winning games, it's not because we are hitting lead up forwards. Even when Checkers was alone inside forward 50, he didn't or couldn't lead into space. It's always been that long kick in. And while that is true from Andrew, there were a couple of occasions where we did have forwards on their own. I couldn't remember Hoskin Elliott twice or maybe three times in a paddock of space in front of him at half forward, and they just weren't going to him.
Yep.
We just continued to bomb it in long, and it just never worked in our favour.
Yeah, we played it right into Melbourne's hands.
Over to Instagram, John Kakos. I think we need McStay as the third full-time marking option alongside Checkers and Johnson. He can present down the line and also deep in attack, allowing Mycheck and Johnson to stay deeper. I'd rather see Elliott staying at ground level and sweeping up any crumbs that fall and provide that defensive pressure he's renowned for. So a couple of things to take from there. So he's happy to have McStay, Johnson and Checkers in the same forward line. Do you think that's something that could work?
I would have loved it yesterday, and I say that because I've been screaming for... I think Ash plays the lead-up forward role really well. Had a really quiet day yesterday. I think McStay provides us more in terms of that Travis Cloak style of mark, that man on man, not learning out the muscle mark, and that's really what we lacked yesterday. We speak about Darcy Cameron was muscled around the ground by the ruckman. Someone like Dan McStay can come in and help mitigate that. But I feel like up forward, Ash Johnson leading at the ball is the better option there. So that's going to be a fascinating one for us to see how we go. Because I won't, sort of mince my words. Ash Johnson was pretty poor yesterday. And I feel like when Ash isn't leading up to the ball and taking marks, he doesn't really give us much in the way of groundwork or sort of running the other way. So, yeah, a fascinating selection call by...
Sort of where he got found out in the final series too last year. But again, he's a bit of a confidence player too. If he doesn't clunk a couple early, it doesn't really go his way. So we'll see if he can bounce back. The second part to that was about Elliott when he does come back into that team. So is it a case where we don't want to see him go further up the ground and provide that role that maybe Bobby Hill has in previous weeks, and that he's just purely a deep forward where he can potentially take some inside 50 marks, but more importantly, create that pressure and win the crumbs?
Yeah, I think we're probably just looking to those blokes to make defenders nervous a bit. And on Monday, the Dees defenders, they weren't nervous at all. They were having it all their own way.
A couple more to finish off. Ian's Kegs Grant on Instagram played 2 lazy games against weaker opponents and brought bad habits against a better opponent. Can't afford to ease off at any time against any team. Those lapses cost games when it counts. That is a great call, I think, there from Ian. The fact that we were coming into this clash against the Roos and the Eagles and had disappointing quarters in those games, it was our quality and talent in the end that was able to get us over the line, but that wasn't the case. I think points that I made in those previous 2 games were our scores came from transition. I don't know what the stat was against Melbourne yesterday, but I reckon we got a hell of a lot of scores from transition yesterday because the Demons were all over us, especially in that corridor. So, yeah, those bad habits. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's a very, very, very good call, and sometimes that can happen against the lesser sides. You drop your colours is maybe a bit of a harsh call, but yeah, you do maybe not go at 100%. Could be a bit of a kick up the backside going into the bye, and yeah, again, hopefully the boys can get up and about against Adelaide.
Josephine Ann on Instagram. Something we've been very good in the fly era is adapting our style to reflect the state of the game is in, hence our come from behind wins. However, I feel like our inability to adapt yesterday was a concern, and similarly to the West Coast game, I feel like our second and third quarters were quite poor and flat. I don't think these are major problems and just show that perhaps a few people were sore and under the weather and we couldn't play with our usual intensity. So that's another one where it's those traits from previous games against, I guess, lesser sides come into a match against a really good outfit in Melbourne and sort of get found out. We didn't have time to really adapt. It's an interesting call because we do usually adapt, and Fly made the call with the sub in the third quarter. He knew that Johnson wasn't having that impact that we would have liked to have seen, so he puts Markov on, who I thought was okay. Just unfortunately, the state of the game at the time he came into it really made it difficult for Markov to have an impact. But yeah, I think the fact that I get what she's saying about adapting the game style and taking the game on, but I think it was the fact that we did adapt our game style and didn't take the game on in the first stage of the last quarter that sort of cost us in the end.
Yeah, I think it comes down to that, and again, the skill execution. I feel like we play. I'm going to sound like a broken record on this episode, but played straight into Melbourne's hands, and with their defensive structure, and then finally when we were able to, get our offense on our terms and move the ball fast. All it takes in AFL footy, Nico, is one errant handball, one missed kick, and an outfit as good as Melbourne, they'll do that to you and go up the other end and score. And lucky for us, they kept missing their set shots. Otherwise, I think we probably would have been buried a bit sooner.
I think it was 6 or 7-16 or 8-18, something like that. They finished it with in the end. I'll finish with Leo, the master regular here for AskPiesNation. A disappointing result, but I'm not concerned in the slightest about our season. No one goes through a year with only one loss anymore. Melbourne simply had all the answers last night. They restricted our ball movement, and that forced us into turnovers and mistakes. That's it. Fly and Co will know exactly how to handle this great time for the bye, I reckon, which is exactly what you've been saying throughout this whole episode, Jack, with the bye.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think I'm really, really keen to see how they respond. It's a home game against Adelaide, who are absolutely no easy beats. I think most people now have them in their top 8 come the end of the year. Certainly can't be, or they struggle to be beaten at home. So yeah, now we've had a poor day against the Dees on King's birthday, but rest up, and now you're looking for a response, and I really think under Fly will get it.
Yeah, I really hope we do. So we'll see how that goes over the next few weeks. That was Ask Pies Nation. Be sure to get involved in all our social media channels for Ask Pies Nation following each match day. Let's move on to our Guess the Crowd. No Guess the Margin winner, of course, because we lost, so we don't care what margin you picked because we didn't win. So we'll move on. Let's get straight to our Guess the Crowd competition winner. We'll put these trusty headphones on seamlessly, as we like to do. It was a record crowd for a Kings/Queen's birthday game. I think just over 83,000 people, which is awesome to see. I still contend that we would have got a lot more had it been a Collingwood home game, but that's just Melbourne for you. So, anyway.
It was actually interesting to see the crowd set up, Nico. It was very much like a final. I felt like the Collingwood supporters were separated from the Melbourne supporters. It was like an FA Cup final at Wembley. But no, it was good.
What was it like in the MCC, knowing that that's pretty much Melbourne Central?
It is always very fiery in the MCC on King's birthday, I should say. And none more so than this year. It was
interesting.
It was battle in there, Nico. Yeah, had a bit of a rough day, but that's okay. That's okay. We're better for the experience.
Absolutely. Let's get to this Guess the Crowd competition winner because we're about to speak to Brendan, who was 12 off the crowd in the end. So very close to that perfect number, but nonetheless, it was good enough to get him on board. So let's see what he's got to say following that game yesterday.
Hello, Brendan speaking.
Brendan, it's Nicholas from the Pies Nation podcast, mate. How you going?
Okay, Nick, how you going, mate?
Good, thank you. Congratulations for being our Guess the Crowd competition winner for this week's episode. Only 12 off the crowd, a pretty good effort. Were you one of the 83,000 odd there yesterday to watch the Pies go at it?
No, unfortunately not, mate. I used the long weekend break to get away with the family. So, fortunately and unfortunately, I did miss the loss. But yes,
Look, not a bad call in hindsight with the actual result, but at the same time, nice for you to get away with the family for a bit. We've been
absolutely.
having a chat on this episode just about, I guess, the season to date. We know that we always like to win every game we can, but do you feel like that result yesterday was the loss we had to have heading into the mid-season bye?
Yes and no. I think thought we're probably due one, but I just hate using the word due because I just hate losing. But I thought we were quite poor after the first 15 minutes. I thought Melbourne really done their homework on us, turned the screws a bit. We looked a bit lost going forward. Back line was great again, a bit slow in the middle. But that last quarter, you just kind of sense we need a bit of a spark here. And the spark was sitting in the grandstands. So it's kind of hard to I know they had Oliver out, but we had a lot of good players out, which I think on the flip side is great. They're all going to come back in and make an impact. So in the day, it was 4 points. I mean, people are banging on about should have been 5 or 6 goals, but it wasn't. It was a kick. So
There you go. Beautiful.
Brendan, just Jack here, mate. Thank you for taking the time to come on. Always interested to get the stories of our Pies Nation faithful and their story to becoming Collingwood supporters. Would you mind sharing yours?
yeah, mate. Yeah, sure. My grandfather was a mad Collingwood supporter. So he took me to my first game. It was round 6, 1986. So I'm 43, boys. So I'm a little bit older than you. So, and I just fell in love straight away with it. I remember it like it was yesterday, sitting at the top of the Olympic stand. And it was actually the day Peter Dacos came back after 12 months off after doing his knee in 85. And yeah, my grandfather just took me to Victoria Park games, MCG games for between 86 and 89. And then he retired and took up lawn bowls. And then I was stuck. And then we found out our next door neighbour in Reservoir was a man Collingwood supporter who went to every single game, Waverley, you name it. We went everywhere. So between 87 and 92, I don't think I missed a Melbourne game, to be honest. So it's just been part of pretty much my whole life, to be honest, and it means a lot to me. So it's just always been there. So it's I've been a member for about 24 years. So it's been lots of ups and lots of downs. But basically just my grandfather. And I've just passed that tradition down to my 2 boys now who love the club, and they're a bit upset yesterday, but I'm sure they'll get over it.
Hey, don't worry. I think you've suffered a few more heavier losses than the one yesterday over your time, but great to hear. Great to hear that history there. And a northern suburbs boy, always close to my heart. Also, so.
Mate, I grew up in Reservoir, so if you didn't go to Collingwood and Reservoir, you're a bit of an outcast. Trust me.
Love to hear that. You, as we mentioned, you've been a Collingwood fan for quite a while, which is brilliant. Give us a former and a current favourite player from your time supporting the Pies.
Current's Jordan DeGoey. I just think he's just that thing that, a 6'1", 6'2", 90 kilo bull who can kick goals and do everything. And he's gone on another level this year. I've been a big fan of Geordie since day one. He's had his ups and downs. I've always stuck by him, but he's that kind of bloke. Hopefully now, age 26, 27, he can mature a bit and get himself right for the second half of the year. And former player, well, ask anyone my age, they'll ever say Buckley or Peter Dacos, and I'll have to go with Dacos. He was just incredible. Like that 1990 season, to kick 97 goals from a pocket was quite extraordinary. And it wasn't just handball over the top goals either. It was genuine left foot, right foot, snaps, bananas, torpedoes. He was just amazing. So he was by far my favourite former player with Jordan McGoey, the current.
Well, we don't want to get trapped into the Gary Ablett Senior, Gary Ablett Junior debate on this podcast, but do you have an early call on if Nick can be as good as his dad? I mean, even Josh is making claims that he might be right up there. What's that like? You've seen all 3 of them at the peak of their powers. Is it deja vu? What's the feeling?
Well, it's a great question. I think Josh has had to work really hard to where he's got now. I'm not saying Nick hasn't, but Nick's just a natural. You can just see. I mean, his first game last year, I've never seen a first game play. He wanted the ball. Usually first game players or first year players hide, but he was like, give me the ball. And his skills are just, I mean, you guys have been on about it all year, but he's quite incredible. But I think they're different players. I think Peter, I mean, he did have a time in the middle. He won Copeland's in 82 and 88 as a midfielder. But I just think, it's too early to tell. But if he's half the player his old man was, he's up there definitely. But he's a joy to watch. We're very lucky to have him.
Yeah, special player for sure.
We absolutely are so lucky to have that whole family
Absolutely.
involved in the black and white. Brendan, thank you so much for coming on and giving us some of your time today and reminiscing about your favourite times as a Pies supporter. Hopefully we're celebrating plenty more wins throughout the 2023 season. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, boys, and keep up the great work.
Thanks, Brendan. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
See you, mate. Bye.
There we go. That was Brendan joining us as part of our Guess the Crowd competition. That could be you if you guess the crowd closest. So be sure to keep out for Luke's game day posts every week. And if you look out for the Guess the Crowd competition post, get your closest guest. And if you are the nearest to the exact crowd, you are the one that comes on and joins us as part of the Guess the Crowd competition. So great to hear from Brendan. Someone that's, I know I've seen comment and interact a lot with our posts, so really great to get him on and awesome insights there from him.
Yeah, absolutely, Nick. I'm always really fascinated to hear the Pies Nation faithful story about how they came to be a Collingwood supporter, and also really fascinated to hear the comparison between Peter and his sons. You know, how lucky they would have been to watch Pete go about his work, and how lucky are we now to be able to go watch the two Dacos boys, and we've got 2 whole careers ahead of us to enjoy.
Pretty qualified person to talk about it as well, being an experienced person in both eras. So great to have him, and a northern boy at heart. I always like northern suburbs boys. Let's move on to the VFL report. No Marcus here, so I'll take the reins, and I bet he's shattered his missing out on this one because it was a 14-point win for the VFL Pies over the reigning premiers away from home, Casey Demons. So able to get on top. It was a pretty slow start to the game. They kicked 5 goals to 1 in the first quarter, did Casey, but were able to turn things around, kick 10 goals to 3 after quarter time, put in a dominant victory. I think their reserve sides had the yips as well in front of goal, did the Demons. 8-11 they finished off with, but we were able to put them away and hold our lead from the second term onwards. Nathan Kruger, a standout, 5 majors. Terrific to see him get on the scoreboard and have an influence in that area of the ground as well. We know he's had his struggles with injuries, but if he can get some consistent form like that, he'll be knocking on the door to get back into that senior team for sure. Top disposal winners went to Trent Bianco with 23. Trey Rusco finished with 22 disposals alongside Neville Jetta, who's just continuing to be a beast in that side with 20 touches, as well as Finley McRae. So great to see everybody get involved there. But I'll move on to Serge's report because we know we always like to get the most exclusive and extensive notes from our man Serge. Krug's masterclass. He begins with 5 goals. Steen was our best. Pies kicked 10 goals after quarter time, set up by good pressure and transition. Great games from Bianco, Begg and Rusco. Josh Carmichael and Finn McRae quiet. Pies go into the bye with a win. Pies won most of the stats and the free kick count. Reef and Glover did not play, so expect Reef to be in the side, which ended up becoming in the end. So nice little wrap up there from Serge. As he mentioned, we do have the bye this week, so a nice little break for our VFL boys who currently are trying to get their claim back into that finals area. So we'll see if they can put in some good performances in the second half of the season. So as it stands, I'm just doing my quick maths here, they sit 12th on the ladder at the moment. They're 5-5 after 10 games, and we'll see if they're able to get on top later on.
Whereabouts do Casey sit on that table?
Casey is 7th as a result of that loss.
Okay.
But they're on the same points as North Melbourne, who are in 6th spot.
Yep.
Believe it or not, Gold Coast and Brisbane share top spot at the moment. So not bad for a VFL comp, seeing these two Queensland sides come in. The Suns and the Lions both 9-1 with percentages of 150 plus. And then Box Hill sitting 3rd.
Yes.
And to see Hawthorn's struggles, I know they've had a great win over the weekend too, but yeah, remarkable to see that VFL comp as it stands. So nice bye for the Pies and the VFL. I'm sure they'll enjoy it to rest up, and we'll get Marcus's very quick VFL report when he comes back to see who we play next. The VFLW, the whole comp had a bye for the King's birthday weekend. We take on Carlton at the AIS Centre on Saturday morning, 11 a.m. The Pies are 3rd. Carlton are in 8th and just outside the top 6. So if you can keep them out of there, that'd be nice. Only a few games to go as well in the VFLW season. So see if we can continue that. Now, before we wrap up, because no, of course, Monday headline to speak of, but we'll have a quick little mid-season review next week. So keep an eye on that episode to come out, and we'll have plenty of questions for you guys. But I want to get your thoughts on something here, Jack, before we finish off. Tom Morris reported on SN the other day that Collingwood had requested to swap venues for their Brisbane and Freo home games. Brisbane Clash obviously is meant to be at Marvel. Fremantle's was going to be at the G. We wanted a straight swap. The AFL, in their incredibly logistic mind, said no. Now, I know I'm wearing this top for a reason. It says to rant. I'm doing a little one here because why would that not work? Would that not be the perfect scenario? Now, the reason apparently that they didn't swap that Freo game because it meant that Carlton Port Adelaide would be at the MCG. Why not? It'd be nice to see Port beat Carlton at the MCG because more people can watch the Blues lose. But the more important fact here is surely Collingwood, Brisbane, 2 top 4 sides that you know are going to attract a massive crowd. That game would almost be sold out already. Yet that game's going to be at Marvel. You're going to shut so many fans out. Not to say, as a bias point of view, we'd probably have a better chance of beating them at the MCG. But regardless, that would just make perfect sense for all parties involved. The Lions get another crack at the MCG to try and prove their finals credentials at that ground, even though they did beat Melbourne there last year. We get another game at the G. We play Freo at Marvel, which would make more sense because of the crowd and logistics. Maybe I'm just being a biased Pies fan here, but surely that would make sense for that to have occurred, and I'm disappointed that it didn't go ahead.
Look, I think if you're a Brisbane fan, you're probably happy that it's still staying at Marvel. But not if you're just a Collingwood fan, but I think if you're a footy fan, you're disappointed this is at Marvel because, all things being equal, we still keep going the way we're going. I think that'll be a sellout at Marvel Stadium. But I think against Brisbane, they've got all the old Fitzroy supporters, and they're a fairly big club. But I think you'd get a lot of neutral supporters to the Friday night game, as well as a lot of Collingwood and Brisbane supporters. And I think it could just be built up to be something so much bigger than it's going to be at Marvel. And the other one was I know all Melbourne teams, regardless of whether you play your home games at Marvel or home games at the G, you've got a set contract that you have to play a certain amount of home games at Marvel. But it's not like we won't be fulfilling that.
It's a straight swap.
With swapping it with the Freo game. And yeah, I'd get along early to go watch Carlton lose. I've done it 4 times already this year. So, yeah, watching Carlton lose would be good fun. But another one of those things where it's not going to hurt anyone if we do swap it. It makes sense to swap it. Don't they? They didn't release the fixture until
the actual dates and times, not till a couple of weeks ago. No.
Was the grounds already locked in?
I think so.
Okay, well that makes
doesn't matter.
Yeah, makes it tough. Makes it tough then. But yeah, I don't understand why these things can't be changed. But the AFL world will blow up. Collingwood getting their way, playing on what is the home ground of the MCG.
Logistical sense, it's all it is. It's not like we're trying to take a Marvel game off us. We'll give it to Freo, who have about 4 people rock up to that game. So. Anyway, it doesn't make sense. We'll live with it. We'll win anywhere. Doesn't matter. We're not Richmond. We won't complain like Hardwick used to about Marvel. We'll go anywhere and we'll win. So we'll see how that goes. But nonetheless, if a miracle turns out and we can get it changed, who knows? But
it would make way more sense to have it at the G on the Friday night. I think for everyone, for a money-making sense, I can't imagine why they didn't want to swap it as well. So,
that's it. Yeah, but anyway. Like we said, we'll have some mid-season stuff to go through next week. A nice little buy, so it'll be a nice short episode for all of us. But enjoy the week off, and hopefully we can get into some more winning ways in the second half of the season. Jack, thanks as always for stopping by.
No worries, Nico. Thanks for having me again. And looking forward to the week off. Come at a good time. But I reckon I'll get to about Thursday this week, and I'll be ensuring that we're not playing. So looking forward to a really, really big response from the boys against Adelaide Sunday week.
Yes, looking forward to that. Absolutely. I've been your host, Nicholas Sacco. You've been listening or watching to the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. Thanks for listening to the Pies Nation podcast, and thanks to Liquorland, who are proud partners of the show. Enjoy winter your way with Liquorland. Liquorland, from the land you love. Please drink responsibly.